hero of many in this room and beyond. I want to concur with a lot of what's been said already by my colleagues here at CSEA. We have very similar programs in terms of getting our members engaged in the civic process, in terms of the mechanics and the science that goes behind our GOTV operations and so forth. But and we have a lot of great groups in the city that also do that kind of work as well. But I fear that something that may be missing from this conversation more often than not is the political education piece. And I say that because, especially given what the events of the last week, it's probably the worst time to have me on this panel because there's so much to say.
It's the best time.
and so much to express. But Sonia, perhaps better than anybody else in this room, and Menendez, Soya, and Erat, can tell you why there was a Young Lords Party and a Black Panther Party in the late 60s and early 70s. And it's interesting that just the other day, we marked the 45th anniversary of the assassination of somebody in Chicago, a Black Panther by the name of Fred Hampton. Yep. He was the architect of the original Rainbow Coalition, not the one that came to be defined much later by Jesse Jackson. And Hampton at the time was at the cusp of really creating a transformative organization, the Rainbow Coalition, bringing together Latinos, poor whites, African Americans who believed that, and I'll highlight this, the democratic system in Chicago, a democratic machine in Chicago led by Mayor Daley and the ruling class there, were using gang wars to consolidate their political positions by gaining funding for law enforcement and dramatizing crime rather than underlying issues. Now you know why he had to be taken out. It's not unlike what's happening in many cities in America today. Before I go any further, I just want to have a little disclaimer. And this is my humble opinion. Has nothing to do with CSCA's, more or less where they're going with the politics in the city and state. But feel free to disagree or at least engage me or engage us in a conversation afterward. I want to leave you with two definitions, but before that I want to touch on something that Ed said and Henry a little earlier today, which is it's become obvious that we have too much faith in particular candidates, or it's become obvious that we become too complacent or too comfortable with a political party. And by that I mean that we have to recognize there are two definitions that I threw out there in the primary, right before the primary, to some friends, just to have some fun and also engage them in conversation. Einstein said it best. What's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I added another one, which is the Stockholm Syndrome. That psychological phenomenon in which hostages express empathy and sympathy and have a positive feeling toward their captors, sometimes to the point of defending and identifying with their captors. These feelings are generally considered irrational in light of the danger or risk endured by the victims, who essentially mistake a lack of abuse from their captors for an act of kindness. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
I'll be the first to admit, as a former candidate for city council myself and somebody involved in many Democratic campaigns in the city, that I've gotten my ass kicked by the party, symbolized by an ass many a time.